Hi, everyone. Welcome to True Wellness Today. My name's Dori Smith, and today I'd like to take about an hour or so to tell you my life story and hopefully change your life with it. So, this story is all about how I reversed my 7 autoimmune diseases using the latest medical science. And also, I want to teach you how you can do the same thing. And let me just say, it's totally okay to be skeptical, because when I first learned the new science, I was really skeptical too. So don't take my word for it. Just watch the video and then do your own research. So I want to make some important promises to you. You're not going to get to the end of this video and find some miracle product that you need to buy in order to get well. Okay? That's not what I'm about. I'm on a mission. I am an autoimmune disease scientist. I have the latest information that can truly help you, just like it helped me. And I want you to have that information. And so in this webinar, I'm going to give you everything that you need to get well. And you can actually get started on it today. I'm going to give you that much information. And I want to just give you great hope that as you sit and watch this video, you're going to learn things that even your doctor doesn't know. And this information can truly change your life. So at the very end, I will teach you how to hire the right medical professionals who are trained in the new science and that can truly help you. And I'll tell you up front, I'm one of them. So I'm always here to answer your questions and help you with whatever you need. So let's get started. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to share a slide with you. And let's see. Okay, there we go. Now you should be able to see me and also the slide. And this is just the easiest way for me to teach you. As you can tell, I'm a real person. I'm not some infomercial babe, right? So this is just the easiest way for me to teach you the information. Okay, so my story. I was a research scientist for 13 years. I was in the field of molecular immunology, autoimmunity, and environmental toxicology. And I did my PhD fellowship with the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. That's a branch of the United States government's NIH. And I did my PhD research also at Duke University Medical Center and at the VA hospital there. And it was about that time that I decided that I was going to make a pretty stupid decision. I decided that I was going to get my own set of autoimmune diseases. And it started with scleroderma and fibromyalgia. And then it progressed to arthritis and thyroiditis, which I later found out was Hashimoto's, polymyositis, Addison's disease, and IBS, which I also later found out was actually Crohn's. And in the conventional way of thinking, the dogma that I was taught as an autoimmune scientist, and that, you know, all medical doctors and all scientists are taught, right, back in the day, is that, okay, you've got autoimmune disease, honey, you're screwed. That's basically the way it is. There's no cure. The disease is progressive. All you can hope for is remission if you take the right drugs, but those drugs are going to hurt you as well. And then the disease, more often than not, can come back. And there's basically no hope. And I was given an average of 10 years to live. They said, at the most, if I'm really lucky, I might get 20 out of this. So it was, you know, not a good thing to hear that. So this is my granddaughter, Jana, when she was a baby. And because of a family tragedy, I was raising her by myself. It was just her and me, and there wasn't anyone else to do it. And when I was diagnosed, she was only 3 years old. And so my worst fear was that I wouldn't live long enough to raise her and that she would be left alone in foster care. And as you can imagine, that was probably about, the worst thought that I could have during this whole time. So over the course of about 10 years, I lost my career. I became completely disabled. I was tried on about 20 different medications altogether, including some real terrible ones like methotrexate and gabapentin, steroids. They finally settled on a cocktail of about 12, and that included 3 different painkillers that I took almost daily. There were many, many, many treatments. I can't even count how many. Lots of hospitalizations, a lot of suffering, a lot of fear for the future. And, unfortunately, even though I was on all the medications, my disease continued to progress. I never did go into any kind of remission. And I found out later that this is because all the medications that we use today in conventional medicine are basically slowing the disease somewhat and also treating the symptoms, but not the underlying cause. None of the drugs that they use in conventional medicine treat the underlying cause, and that's because conventional medicine says, well, we don't know the cause, so there's not much we can do about it except just try to slow it down and try to keep people comfortable. So it was a pretty hairy ride, and it was a lot of suffering, but that's not the end of my story. So let me go back and say that I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm a Christian. And so I have a pretty strong relationship with the Lord. And one day I was in the middle of a flare-up that had lasted about 2 weeks long. It was grueling. It was one of those where you can barely get out of bed to go to the bathroom. I mean, you just lay there thinking, okay, you have to get up and go. And you're in so much pain and you're just feeling so horrible that you don't even want to get up. But I got up, and I was walking back from the bathroom, and I will never forget this as long as I live. I just said to the Lord, this sucks. And I'm really scared. I've got to raise Jana, and I'm just getting worse and worse. And if there's anything that I've missed, please just show me, because this is just really hard. And, this next part of my story, some people don't believe it, but I'm just here to tell the truth. I'm just telling it like it is. I got back into bed, and up popped a YouTube video, and it said my main disease, which was scleroderma, and functional medicine. And I went, functional medicine, what is that, right? And I thought that it had something to do with natural medicine, and I really didn't know what it was, but I didn't buy into it. Let's just put it that way. And let me just go back and say that as a conventionally trained scientist, we're actually told when we're doing our literature searches and we're doing, we're writing our dissertation and we're doing all that, and we have to gather a lot of information. We have to read a lot of peer-reviewed scientific journals. And when we're doing that, we bring them to our advisor and we say, okay, these are the ones that we're reading, and they approve them or disapprove them. Anything that had to do with natural medicine or anything out of Europe, anything out of Japan, it was naturally put aside. It's like, nope, let's just look at the American pharmaceutically driven papers, and that's really what you get trained in. And so we're really not given a full education. Now, I didn't know this back then, but I know it now. So anyway, I completely poo-pooed this. I said, well, I'm not going to watch this video. And about an hour went by, And it just kept bugging me, bugging me, bugging me, bugging me, bugging me. And I finally said, okay, all right, am I supposed to watch this video? Okay, I will, but it's probably just a bunch of bunk. And, but, you know, looking back, God knows how to speak to us individually when he wants us to know something. And in my case, he knew exactly what to put in that video to make me sit up and take notice. And it was really filled with these just peer-reviewed scientific studies from journals, from the top researchers in the world, like, you know, places like Harvard and the Cleveland Clinic and places that I trusted. And I went, oh my goodness. And in these videos, they showed case studies of people actually healing. And I was just blown away. I'd never seen anything like this. I mean, even the really, really difficult diseases like Parkinson's and autism and Alzheimer's and you know, lupus and multiple sclerosis and so many different diseases, people were being healed using this new science. And so I said, oh, wow, okay, I've got to check this out. And that was when that night I was given my first ray of hope that actually something about my own disease could change. And I said, wow, Lord, you know, it just kind of hit me. I went, wow, Lord, did you just answer my prayer? I think you did. But then, you know, I was laying there feeling so awful. And I thought to myself, well, is this really true? And, you know, even if it is, would it work for me? Right? Because I'd been sick for so long. But it really did give me my first ray of hope. So it made me get my geek on totally. And for about 2 months, I really just did nothing but study from my bed, from my chair, right? And it was as though I was in school again. I just did a comprehensive literature review. I studied all the top names in functional medicine. And then once I learned a lot, and especially once I saw a doctor named Dr. Terry Walls, and she healed herself with this new science from multiple sclerosis. And she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk, you know, and she's a scientist, she's a doctor. And she learned this new science and she healed herself because conventional medicine was basically killing her. There was nothing else for her in conventional medicine. And as a conventional medicine doctor, she knew that. And so she found the new science, as a lot of people have. She definitely was not the first. And she healed herself. And now she runs a clinic and she has healed thousands of people from multiple sclerosis, or if they don't become completely healed, they at least become so much better that they get their lives back. And, you know, this is just amazing. So I put all this research together and said, okay, you know, there's got to be something to this, but let's just see if it works in me. So I started experimenting on myself with the protocols that I found in the literature. And it happened pretty quickly. I mean, within a couple of weeks, I started feeling different. I started feeling better. And it was a small change. It wasn't a miracle change. It was a small change, but it was enough to tell me, okay, there's really something to this. And so I got busy and I hired a doctor. And at first, the doctor that I hired was not the right choice. And he was a great doctor, but he didn't have all the information, all the latest science, right? The good things that he did for me was he found a bunch of vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And he also found an invisible infection, which we're going to find out later is one of the 7 causes of autoimmune diseases. And mine was a mycoplasma infection. And then he was able to wean me off of my steroids. And at the same time, I was able to wean myself off of all my other medications that I was on. So all those things were good, right? The bad thing is that he was not completely trained in the new science. He only had part of the knowledge. And so some of the work that he did in me actually caused more pain and suffering in the end. It actually destroyed my gut flora, which is, you're going to find out in just a few minutes here, is really, really bad, because that's the most important thing we need to heal. So for 14 months, he had me on this treatment, and I was continuing to study. And like I said, it destroyed my gut microbiome. It just caused a horrible imbalance. And so I decided on my own that I would find a new doctor. But this time, with everything that I was studying over all that time, I realized where I needed to go. I needed to go to the Institute of Functional Medicine, because they are the world's largest training facility for doctors in this new science that is really helping people to heal. And let's just say that it took some creative financing in order to do this, because functional medicine is often not covered by insurance. And because it's so new, right? Some of it is, some of the testing is, but some of it isn't. And so in order for me to get well, and I was already convinced that the science was real, I just needed a doctor that was trained in it in order to help me do it, right? Because even as a scientist, I couldn't do this by myself. I really needed someone to help me, and I needed someone who could do all the right testing for me as well. That was very important. So I did some very creative financing. I had to figure out a way to do it. I had to borrow from friends, because I was on Social Security disability, raising a child by myself. And, you know, when you're on disability, there is no extra money. You barely get by without help as it is. And so I had to get help from friends. I got a little grant. I knitted, I crocheted, I made little hats. I mean, I did whatever I could do in order to afford to pay for the doctors and the testing. And some of the testing I was even able to get for free, because the doctors were so wonderful. They wrote the companies and said, hey, you know, help this lady out. And they did. And so, you know, there are lots of ways to get well. So please don't let money stand in the way. I was not going to let anything stop me from getting well. And that's something I want to motivate you as well. Don't let anything stop you from getting well. So it was about 1.5 years now into my research and into my healing journey. And I had learned a lot by that time, but I still had some more learning to go. And let's remember that I was still very sick, right? I was getting better, but this treatment plan that the doctor put me on actually made me worse in several ways. And so I was still very sick, and just, you know, doing my best to learn everything I could while I'm going along. And with this new doctor, it took about 4 months to get all of the functional medicine testing done and to get the results back. And during this time, I had decided that a full ketogenic diet with cutting out sugar completely was the way to go. And you're going to find out that, you know, this can help you as well, but there are better ways of doing it too. But at the time, this is what I knew. And so I did a full ketogenic diet. And within about 3 weeks or so, I started feeling this just amazing, like, surge of energy. There was much less pain. A lot of my symptoms, and I've got so many that I won't even list them for you. And if you've got autoimmune disease, you know what I mean. Like, you know, it'd take me forever just to list them, right? And a lot of those really diminished, right? Some of them went away, and I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing, right? And it was true. I was feeling better than I had felt in over 12 years with this disease, just from going on the ketogenic diet, and also with a couple of the protocols that we were already doing. And this lasted for about 3 months or so until I screwed up. So it wasn't completely me screwing up, right? So I'm not going to beat myself up. I really did have a perfect storm. And I know if you have autoimmune disease, many of you can relate to this as well. It can actually, having a perfect storm emotionally can actually cause an autoimmune disease breakout, right? If you never had autoimmune disease before, having a lot of stress can actually be the precipitory factor that makes it actually come out. And what happened with us was we suffered another really crazy family trauma. At the same time, we were actually ending and getting me completely off of my steroids, right? Which made my cortisol way too low. When you have really low cortisol, you don't want really low cortisol or really high cortisol. You want your cortisol to be where it's supposed to be, right? If it's too low, you can actually die from that, and it can make your hormones go absolutely nuts. And it is not a pretty place to be. And so there I was. And at the same time, I was going into full-blown menopause. I had stopped menstruating for about a year. And that's the time when they say, okay, here you go. You're in full-blown menopause now. And all this happened in the same month, right? So what happened was I started to cheat on my diet because I was so overwhelmed with everything going on. I started to cheat. And little by little, I got back onto a full-blown, really terrible diet. And let me tell you, I was the worst junk food junkie that there probably is walking the face of the earth, okay? I mean, you know, my favorite foods were M&Ms and ice cream and bread and lots of pasta and just, you know, tons of sugar and just everything that you're not supposed to eat. Those were all my favorite foods. And if someone would tell me, well, you know, you'd probably feel better, you'd probably have less inflammation, and you'd probably feel better if you didn't eat all that junk, and I would actually get mad at them. And I would actually say, hey, I'm sick. This is my only vice. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I'm sick as a dog, and leave me alone. Leave me alone with my bag of M&Ms. and yeah, and I would get really mad at people for telling me that. Yeah, they were right. Okay, well, we'll find out that later. So the thing is that I was doing so well, feeling so much better, getting better and better when I was on the ketogenic diet. As I got off of it and I got back to my old lifestyle, I got worse and worse. And actually, I got so worse that I could really barely function both physically and hormonally. And it was a very, very difficult time. I had migraines worse than I'd ever had in my life. And I'd suffered with migraines since I was 12. So I had a lot of experience with that. The worst migraines ever. Horrible gastrointestinal problems, severe exhaustion, pain, on and on and on. All my symptoms came back with a vengeance. So before I go into how I was able to get back and get to a place where I am today, where I can tell you right now that I am about 90% healed, let's go into some science. And I'm going to make this super, super, super easy for you, okay? So don't turn off the video because this is the part you really need to learn in order to get well. Okay, so you know that we've done the Human Genome Project now. That was back in 2002. And during that time, before that time, I should say, the reigning dogma for over 50 years, as soon as we discovered DNA, was that our genetics are fixed, totally fixed. Nothing we can do about them. They are what they are. You get them from your mom and dad, and if you're lucky, you get healthy genes, or genes that express health, and if you're unlucky, you get genes that express bad health. And if your mom, your grandparents, your aunt, your uncle had some kind of genetic problem, then you're probably going to have that disease as well. And it's just the luck of the draw whether you get it or not. Okay. That's the old school way of looking at it, okay? Now, after 2002, we made some really remarkable discoveries about genetics. And now we know, and it's just, everyone knows this now if you're in the sciences or if you're a doctor, we know this, that it's not our genetics by themselves. Our genetics are what they are, yes. But there's this thing called epigenetics. Okay, and what that means is that it's our environment that causes our genes to express one way or the other. Okay, it's the environment that we put ourselves in. So what this means is that if we put ourselves in a really good, healthy diet with what we eat and our lifestyle and, the amount of toxins that are around us, and there's, a bunch of things that lead to health, right? Our genes will most likely express health. Even if we've got some really bad genes in there, like breast cancer genes or some other kind of gene, right? Or Alzheimer's genes or heart disease genes, right? If we put those genes in a really healthy environment, that's going to calm down the bad expression and they're going to express health instead. However, the converse is also true. If you put your genes in a really bad environment, right? If you eat a standard American diet, if you don't exercise, if you drink too much, if you smoke, right? There's a whole bunch of, you put yourself in a lot of toxic situations, okay? If you're really stressed out all the time, there's a lot of reasons to create a bad environment. If you do that, which most of us who live in the modern world do, and we do it regularly and we think it's normal, right? What happens is our genes start to express inflammation and oxidation. Inflammation and oxidation are the main underlying causes of disease. And there are scientists and doctors who believe all disease. We can easily say most disease, right? It's been studied, it's obvious. Inflammation and oxidation are the main underlying causes of most, if not all, diseases. Okay, so you got that. So here's the revelation that should give you huge hope, okay? If you can control your environment, that means that you can control your illness. Does that make sense? Because that's the truth. That's the truth. And you do have control over many of the environmental causes of your disease and of your inflammation and of your oxidation. So you want to know how, right? How can you do this? Well, for one thing, you don't want to waste time, money, suffering, further tissue damage, because the longer that you go on with autoimmune disease or chronic illness symptoms, your body is just continuing to cause damage, more damage, more damage. That inflammation and oxidation, that's what's doing it, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you get out there and you hire a functional medicine team to test for and reverse the 7 root causes of autoimmune disease. So here we go. Here they are. The 7 root causes of autoimmune disease and chronic illness are, and these are the medical terms. I'm going to tell you what they are so that you're educated, and then I'm going to teach you what they are in a really easy to understand way. I'm going to use my own healing to show you what all these things mean. Okay, so the first thing, number 1, is your genetics. You are genetically predisposed with certain things called SNPs, right? And those are just little mutations, and we all have them. We all have many, many, many of them, right? That's what makes us all different, okay? But it's how these SNPs are expressed. We put them in a good environment, they're expressed in a good way. We put them in a bad environment, they're expressed in disease, right? The second is mitochondrial dysfunction. Your mitochondria are these little bacteria-like things that live inside of all of your cells, and you have the most of them in your brain. So they're extremely important. They are the energy powerhouses of your body. So when you feel fatigued, when you feel weak, when you feel tired, it's because you have mitochondrial dysfunction. The third thing is your gut microbiome. It gets completely out of balance. If you haven't heard of the gut microbiome, you're probably so sick that you're living under a rock and you haven't seen the latest, because in the last 10 years, this study of the gut microbiome has just exploded exponentially. And we found out so many amazing things about it. And what it is it's bacteria, virus, different little bugs that live all throughout our body. But now I'm speaking directly about the gut and where they live inside the gut. And what happens is, because of the way we eat primarily, but also because of several other lifestyle factors, they get out of balance. And we have hardly any of the really good bacteria that make us healthy, and a lot of the bad bacteria that make us very, very sick. On top of that, we get what's called leaky gut. And for a while now, doctors, there's been this controversy about leaky gut. Does it really exist? Is it really a real thing? Well, scientists at Harvard have now discovered that yes, absolutely, it is a very real thing. And every single person studied to date that has autoimmune disease has both gut microbiome dysbiosis and a leaky gut. You can't get autoimmune disease without a leaky gut and your gut microbiome being completely screwed up. So that's number 3. Number 4, food sensitivities and allergies. What happens is, when your gut microbiome is messed up and the leaky gut occurs, you eat, but there's malabsorption, right? Your gut is not functioning properly, and it doesn't break down everything that it needs to break down. And so you get these things called macromolecules. So they're pieces of egg, right? And pieces of toast and pieces of, tomato and broccoli and everything that you eat, right? And instead of being broken down properly, they're broken down, but not all the way. So they're bigger molecules. So they call them macromolecules. And those macromolecules, they leak through that leaky gut, and they cause your immune system to go haywire. And that's what creates your food sensitivities and your allergies. Your immune system starts actually making antibodies to egg and broccoli and tomato and all those things that you eat, right? And so people who have autoimmune disease, they'll go get their food testing done, through a functional medicine doctor, because a lot of other people wouldn't know how to do that. But they would go and they would do their food sensitivities, and wow, they're allergic to everything they eat. They're allergic to all their favorite foods. Why? Because they have leaky gut and their food is not being broken down properly. If it's not being broken down properly, not only is it causing widespread inflammation throughout your entire body, your brain, your nerves, your joints, your stomach, your colon, your feet, everywhere, right? But at the same time, you're becoming very, very, very sick. Not a good thing to have happen. So number 5 then is invisible infections. And they've now found that most autoimmune diseases, many, many people have some kind of underlying infection that has gotten out of control. With me, it was mycoplasma. It could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, it could be Epstein-Barr, it could be Lyme disease, it could be any number of diseases. But they found that there's a set of them that are very, very common to people in autoimmune diseases. So that's one thing that you absolutely need to look for in order to fix it and get rid of it so that you can reverse your autoimmune disease. The 6th thing is toxic overload. And I have to get into this on another video because this is such a huge topic. And people who study toxins now believe that this is the number 1 reason why there is so much chronic illness and autoimmune disease in our world today, not just in America, not just in developing countries, but in just about everywhere, with the exception of the places that don't have a lot of toxicity. It's very interesting, and I could go off on a tangent here for a long time. Very, very interesting that those places where they're living a very basic lifestyle, where they live very close to the land, where they're not overloaded with a lot of toxins, where they're not eating crappy food, where, right? I could go on and on this, but those countries and those populations do not get autoimmune disease. They don't get heart disease. They don't get a lot of cancers. They don't get a lot of these things. So there's absolutely a correlation going on there that we need to be aware of. And the last thing, number 7, is what I was talking about before, that perfect storm. There's a big, long, huge name for it that's pretty cool. It's psychoneuroimmunological disturbance. I just, I kind of like saying that because I'm a geek. But anyway, what it means is, you're overloaded with stress. There's a trauma. There's some ongoing chronic stress going on, like a job that you hate or a relationship that's very disturbing, right? And that definitely, even back when I was in school, right, which was in the late 1900s, beginning of the 2000s, they were teaching us this in school, that, look at the studies that say that if you have an amazing amount of stress here, your immune system just falls apart, right? The stress, we think of it, in our modern day, we think, oh, the stress, oh, it's just a small part of this whole big biological picture, right? But it's not. It's a really major part. And so these things do need to be looked at. So those are the 7 causes. So let's go back now and let's look at how they appeared in me. And this is very common. What I went through is very common when you look at all the case studies, and I've studied like hundreds of them. This is very, very common. My genetic predisposition, I had 2 genes, 2 SNPs that, well, these are not SNPs. These are genes. HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8. And they actually are present in just about everybody with Crohn's disease, right? People with Crohn's disease, it's a well-known fact that they cannot tolerate gluten of any kind. So about 80% now of all autoimmune disease patients, it's well known that about 80% are gluten sensitive, right? It's not a fad. It's really real. It's real science, and you can look it up. And it's not just gluten. It's other things in wheat as well. And you don't have to, the testing is not always right, okay? So you have to have certain testing done in order to get it done right and in order to see. And even, you can also do it without spending the money on the testing, right? You could just go off gluten for about 3 weeks and then decide that you're going to eat a pizza. And that'll teach you pretty quick whether you're gluten sensitive or not, because you'll get sick as a dog if you are. But it takes going off of it for a while first, and really going off of it, completely going off of it, 0 gluten whatsoever. And then you add some gluten back in after the inflammation is calmed down, and boom, you'll get sick if you are gluten sensitive. So you can also do it that way and save money without doing the test. With the mitochondrial dysfunction, I had a lot going on, but one thing that I had going on is what's called a COMT SNP. And what that does, it's one of the SNPs that mean that you methylate very poorly. So methylation just means adding a whole bunch of hydrogen methyl groups onto your cells. It's kind of difficult to explain. I hadn't really thought of getting into it that deeply here with you, but if you don't methylate well, then you're going to be very, very sick. And this is one of the main underlying causes of autoimmune disease, is if we've got this genetic problem, we don't methylate well, and then it leads to autoimmune disease and chronic illness of many kinds. So the third, my gut. The gut, it's the most important thing that you need to fix. It controls so much. I had so many multiple strains of bad bacteria going on, and I had almost no lactobacillus, which is one of your really main good guys in there that we know about. They're very, very important. I had almost none that they could see. And then I also had elevated levels of what's called zonulin. And this came out of the published studies from Harvard. A doctor called Alessio Fasano, you can look him up. And there are certain people with certain genetics that if they have high levels of zonulin, that's proof that they have leaky gut. And of course, I had really high levels of zonulin. And this led to a lot of malabsorption problems. I wasn't getting my nutrients like I should have. And so then I had vitamin and mineral deficiencies and deficiencies of many kinds. Food sensitivities. I couldn't eat just about anything without running to the bathroom. Just a mess. I had mycoplasma as my invisible infection. To date, we are working on the toxic overload. We know it's there because when I do my detoxing, I can actually taste metal in my mouth. And when I had all of my mercury fillings removed, I started getting better. It was another little jump in my healing. And so it's pretty obvious that it's there. And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm working on that last step of healing. Like I said, I feel like I'm about 90% healed. I'm back to work. I feel great. I feel awesome, actually. But there are some, some little symptoms, just smaller ones that are left that really need to be taken care of. And so I'm sure that that's where they lie because I've done all the other work. And then the last thing, of course, we already talked about the trauma and the trauma that had occurred in my life, plus everything that was going on at the same time with menopause and, all the stress that I was under being sick. So that was definitely there. And I had to learn how to do some really healthy lifestyle techniques. I had to go to counseling. I mean, I really needed to take a look at that, and I really needed to work on that stress in order to get well. So let's look at some of the basic functional medicine protocols that people do in order to get well and reverse their disease. The main things across the board are nutrition. So let me say that again. The main thing across the board is nutrition. Nutrition is the underlying fundamental factor to getting well. And we seem to think, in conventional thinking, we think, no, it doesn't really have much to do with your diet. Yeah, you can fix your diet, but it's really not a big deal. It's the biggest deal. Food is medicine. And if you don't change your diet, they found you won't get well. You'll get a little better, but you'll still be pretty sick. If you change your diet, the whole thing turns around. It's really, really pretty amazing what happens to people. So nutrition, exercise, rest and sleep, extremely important. You cannot be healthy if you don't get the right amount of sleep and rest every single day. You need to modulate your stress. You need to have a very healthy mindset, right? You can't be thinking negatively constantly and thinking, oh, it's terrible, I'm sick, I'm this, I'm that, right? It's very unhealthy to think that way. And most importantly, you need to have love and community in order to get well. Because being sick, it really sucks. And people don't get it. They don't understand us. They think we're being lazy. They think we're not trying hard enough. They think we're hypochondriacs. They think we're just depressed or just anxious, right? All of that is just a bunch of crap, right? Okay, yeah, some of us might be a little lazy, but okay, that's not what this is about, okay? Yeah, okay, illness is real and we really suffer and people don't get us, right? So even our own doctors sometimes don't get us, right? So the love and the community is so important. We need each other to get well. So the protocols, genetics. You need testing done to determine what your SNPs are. And then once you find out what they are and you see how they're expressing, okay, then you do specific nutritional corrections, all right? You can do it with food. You can do it with supplements, right? A lot of times you can do it with food a lot cheaper than you can do it with supplements. And you're going to see that all throughout all 7 of these, your gut microbiome needs to be balanced for every single one of these, because your gut is, how do I say this? Your gut communicates with every other part of your body. And it's just that important. So if your gut is out of balance, you're not going to be able to really correct all these things properly. So it's very important to always look at each one of these and make sure that your gut is being balanced at the same time. So the second one, mitochondria, it's the same thing. You test for specific biomarkers, and then you use nutrition and supplement corrections in order to fix it. With your gut, you're healing your gut. You do testing to look at your gut flora to see exactly what's going on in there. Okay, you don't play around with it. You want to know. It's the most important thing that you can do to heal yourself. So if this is the only test you can afford to have done, this is the one you have done. Okay, because you have to see what's going on in there, and then you have to correct it and balance it properly. Okay, and then once you get the test done, you can see the bad bugs and you want to kill them off. It's always best to kill them off slow and naturally, because you can get too sick if you do it too quickly. And that was the one mistake that my first doctor made with me, is that he did do it slow, but he did it with very strong antibiotics that completely wiped out my gut. And he didn't even have me on, a certain nutritional protocol or a gut microbiome protocol, right? It just wiped me out and made me sick in many ways. I'm still actually healing from that. So definitely you do it slow and you do it naturally, unless there's no other way to get it done. But that's what you try first. Then you definitely need to make sure that you take your prebiotics, which is mostly vegetables, right? And your probiotics. And your probiotics should be in a spore form. I'm going to be teaching more about that on another video. There's just not time to go into all the details today. And then, of course, you use nutrition and supplements to repair the leaky gut, because without repairing the leaky gut, the inflammation continues. And so long as that inflammation continues, you're still sick. So that's very important. For the fourth thing, the food sensitivities, you can do food map testing, which is a more expensive way to go, but it does give you the answers right away. So if you've got the money to do food mapping, do it, because it's easier. But if you don't, you just simply do an elimination diet. And most people who have autoimmune disease and chronic illness, we have to do an elimination diet to get well and to heal our microbiome anyway. So, you might as well do it that way. But if you've got the money, you can spend it and see exactly what you're having problems with, so you can stay away from it. Invisible infections, you definitely do need to test for this one, but it's not the first test that needs to be done. The first one is the microbiome test. Then you look at certain natural drugs, certain supplements that can get rid of the invisible infections, right? Then the sixth thing is toxic overload. So this is exactly where I'm at right now in my healing. And I've had to do a 9-week detox, and then I'll be going through chelation. But we don't want to start with chelation to get rid of toxins and heavy metals when I was still so sick, because if I had done that, I would have just gotten a lot worse, because my body just wasn't ready for that. It wasn't strong enough for that yet. So that's one of the last things that you can do. I should rephrase that. With your diet, you are detoxing. Once you get onto a very good, solid nutritional plan, you are starting passive detox while you're doing that. So when I talk about getting rid of the excess toxins in step number 6, I'm talking about the really, the heavy detoxing, the really strong detoxing like chelation. If you need to do chelation, you don't do it when you're very sick. You wait until you're well and then do it. And then we already talked about the psychoneural immunological, how to get rid of the stress. It's with counseling, there's stress modification techniques, there's praying, there's yoga, there's, there's exercise. There's so many different ways that you can physically calm down your stress levels and keep the inflammation from going crazy just from the stress. So, I got through that. How was that? Was it really terrible? If you have questions, because I really am kind of a super geek. So if you have questions, and if that was a little fast, just replay the video and send me a PM, or send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer your questions for you, or maybe go into some some extra videos that really explain each one a little slower. But so I've been about 2.5 years on my healing journey. Now you can see by now I'm a real person, and I really did go through all this, and I can tell you without a doubt, I probably could have done this, now looking back, probably maybe 1.5 years instead of 2.5 years, if I'd have done it right. If I'd have known in advance, if I'd have had the right doctor, if I'd have had a really good health coach who had been through what I'd been through and had come out on the other side and could walk me through it, then I would have come through this so much faster and with a lot less worry too. So in the functional medicine model of healthcare, this is the best way that they're thinking that we're going to help our current epidemic, our crisis of chronic illness in America and in other places in the world. What functional medicine does in order to help people save money is they utilize a health coach where they can and utilize the doctor where they need to. And this just makes perfect sense. So if you look at the differences between what a health coach can do for you and what a doctor can do for you, a health coach can do a lot of the same testing and analysis that the doctor does, but the health coach does almost all of the education, spends a ton of time with you, a lot of education, and they walk with you and hold your hand through the process. They help to motivate you. They help to keep you going, right? They help you with your mindset, keeping your head when you're really sick in the right place. It's very important when you're trying to get well. It's not easy. This is a lot of work we have to do to get well. And it's not easy. It's not a cakewalk. It's not as easy as popping a pill and getting well. It's not going to happen that way. And we need a lot of help. We just really do. We need accountability, because some of these things that we're going to do, like quitting M&Ms, like quitting ice cream, like quitting bread, okay, really, really, really hard to do if you're doing it by yourself and if you're not supported really well. And if you don't have that, just love and community, someone holding your hand and someone saying, look, I did this. I know you can do this too. There are thousands of people out there who have done it, and you can too. You can get better, but just let me take you by the hand and let me pull you along here. Let me help you out. Now, the doctor, on the other hand, the doctor does the more in-depth analysis when you need it, right? Because you don't just get by with a health coach, okay? They are cheaper. It's a lot easier, right? They do give you a lot more time, but you can't do everything with a health coach. You just can't, okay? It's not legal, for one thing. You can't. You need to get the testing done. And some of the testing only doctors can do. And the doctors also, they've got a different set of training, right? They can do a more in-depth analysis. They can give you the specific recommendations, right? And they can give you prescriptions if you need them. Functional medicine is not all about only natural, never prescriptions, right? It's just only use the prescriptions if you really, really need them, and don't hurt your body with them. If you need them, you need them, right? If you don't need them, do it the natural way first and see if that works. And get to the root cause. Don't just hit your symptoms with a prescription and just let the root cause fester away and make you worse and worse and worse and eventually die, okay? That's what functional medicine is about. So it's not anti-prescription. It's just, let's not use them as Band-Aids. Let's get to the root cause of the problem first. So your health coach is extremely economical. My health coaching is like something like $35, you know, a visit. Very, very economical, right? Whereas a doctor, you can get into a lot more money that way, but you do need to use your doctor as well. And especially if you're very sick, okay, if you have extreme autoimmune disease and it's gone on for a while, it definitely takes your doctor with a health coach to help you get well if you want to do it in a faster, more economical way. So looking at conventional versus functional medicine, when you look at autoimmune disease and chronic illness, your conventional medicine says, well, we really don't know the causes. And so therefore the disease just continues to progress until death. We're very limited, right? We can only treat the symptoms and we can slow the progression, but, you know, not a lot, sometimes for a little while, but then it can come back again, and uses a lot of pharmaceuticals for all these various symptoms, which are very toxic to us, right? Actually make us worse in the long run. With functional medicine, we use the new science, which tells us that the causes are now known. We know that it's inflammation and oxidation that cause disease, and we know the 7 root causes that are common in all autoimmune and chronic disease patients. And so because of that, we can stop the disease, we can actually halt it, we can stop its progression, and then we can reverse it in most cases. Not in every single case, but in most cases. We can at least make people feel better, we can at least give them some quality of life back, right? And in many cases, the reversal is astounding, like what happened with me. It's just astounding. I just completely got my life back. So we treat, like I said before, we treat the underlying causes. So the symptoms just basically disappear because we dealt with it. It's done. And we also use a lot more natural, non-toxic, and food-related means in order to cure those 7 causes. But it's not perfect. We don't know everything yet. Science has not advanced that far yet. So the future of medicine says all the causes are going to be known. Every single disease is going to reverse, and every underlying cause is going to be known at that point. And we're not there yet. We're honestly not there yet. But functional medicine is the best thing that we have going right now, and it behooves you to try it. So like I said, my autoimmune condition is about 90% reversed and still getting better. And I can honestly say without a shadow of a doubt that the science of functional medicine literally saved my life. And I know that God allowed me to go through this. I'll tell you, I had, just very quickly, I had this crazy thing happen about a year ago where I felt never in my life had I had an experience like this ever, right? But I was praying, and I was not angry at God, but I was like, well, dang, well, how come you let me, if you were just going to teach me how to heal, then how come you let me go on for all these years suffering? And what about my granddaughter suffering? And, you know, this was awful. Why did I go through this? And okay, like, I don't even know how to explain this, but this is very true. I absolutely knew that I was in the presence of God in that split second, and I knew the answer to my question immediately. And it was such an overwhelming experience to me that it just made me cry. And I just knew that my purpose for going through this was so that I can help others. And I never thought I was strong enough to get through this and then to turn around and start a business and help others to get well too. That was never on my agenda. Never on my agenda. Not while I was sick anyway. When I was a scientist years ago, you know, it was my agenda to work as a scientist and be in the lab, and it was all about helping people and finding cures for diseases, and right, you know, that was all my motivation, was helping people. But the whole time I was sick, I lost that. And, you know, so that was not on the radar. What was on the radar was I was just going to get sicker and sicker until I died. That's what was on the radar. And now what was on the radar was, oh, my whole life changed in an instant. And I knew I've been prepared for this, that this is why God made me such a geek when I was a kid. And, you know, and, you know, I had to know everything, and I had to know everything on a molecular level. And I could study like crazy, where, you know, most kids hated doing that, but, you know, but I loved it. Right. And, you know, and then he trained me as a scientist, gave me all that good knowledge and training. Right. And then he gave me the experience at doing it for all those years before I got sick. But then I had to go through the suffering, and I've gone through the suffering so that I could really understand, so that I have been there. I know how it feels. I know the physical. I know the emotional. I know how you lose relationships because of it. I know every detail of it. And then he showed me how to get better. And he showed me how to get better with that science. And he did it in a way so that I could understand it. And now I can teach it to you. So this is my life's mission now. And I can't do anything else but help you to get well. And so that's what I'm all about. And I'm just here to bring hope to you, and to teach you the science, and to walk with you hand in hand, and just to love you into your best health, whatever that is. And that's what I jump out of bed and live for, to do every day. And it just it gives me chills just talking about it. But that's, you know, that's the truth. My life is no longer about laying in bed and being sick and hurting all the time and being sad over loss of productivity, that I can't be a productive member of society anymore. That's not what my life is anymore. Now my life is about helping you. And so I want to do it in a way that is affordable for everyone. You know, it's just very important, because when I was trying to find a way to get well, and I had found the science, and I was trying to find a good doctor, I called around, and I found that there are a lot of doctors out there helping people, and doctors who have healed themselves. But when you call their office and you say, oh, you know, I saw your video, and I know you can help me, and wow, I'm so excited that I'm going to get well. And then they tell you the price. And I had one doctor say $10,000. And I just, you know, I started crying right away, because I knew there's no way on Social Security that I could afford that. So you find that I will help you, even if you have no money. I will help you at a very low price, at a price that's very affordable, that helps me feed my granddaughter. So I am on a very passionate mission. I think I already said that. I got ahead of myself there. But it's really true that we do now know this scientifically, that most autoimmune disease and chronic illness, it's absolutely preventable, and it's reversible. And you can do this. You really can. So here's my granddaughter now. She's 13 and a half, going on 30. And we did something amazing a couple weeks ago, something that she thought we could probably never do, that she would never be able to do something like this with her grandma, because her grandma was too sick. But we went down to the beach. We live in San Diego. And we went down to OB, where they have these little scooters. They're motorized scooters called birds. And you put in your credit card, and those things go like 20 miles per hour. we went and we had so much fun, and we went down the pier. You know, we went tooling around town, we went shopping, we just, you know, we had a great time. And this was something she probably thought would never happen with me, because I was way too sick to do that. I couldn't even drive myself to the doctor, let alone go down to the beach and get on a scooter and ride around and spend the whole day and the whole bit. And so I think that Janet's going to have her grandma around for a long time. And I hope the best for you as well. So I do science-based health coaching, and you can go on my website, and there's a ton more information on my website, and I'm constantly putting more up. And it's a game between, okay, but I got to help these many people today. Oh, but I got to get some more stuff on my website. So, you know, I'm constantly working on that. So, but I always tell people, just if you don't see something on my website and you have a question specifically for your specific disease, just give me a call, right? And I'll be happy to answer your questions anytime. Okay, so I don't know how much time I spent, but I hope it was about an hour. And thank you very much for listening. And just let me know if I can possibly help you. Jump on my website, subscribe. You can subscribe, and that way you'll get information when I put it out. And do your research. That's what's important right now. Don't just sit back and let the disease progress. Do your research. Find out if what I'm saying is true. And once you find out that it is, you can come back to me. I'll help you find a doctor. I'll hook you up on one of my programs, and we'll help you start to feel better. Okay, God bless you. I love everybody, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.